His point was that that kind of a scenario could be much, much worse than what we're even talking about here this evening.
Right. So right now, again, you're just standing by for the news conference that is about to take place at the Aurora Police Department. The Aurora Police Chief and the Aurora Mayor, they're the ones who are going to be speaking. They have actually pushed this news conference back to 5:30 because Governor Pritzker is also on the way. We've been hearing from various public officials, including the governor and including the president too. Senator Durbin also tweeting. A lot of public officials tweeting, of course, that they are thinking about Aurora and thinking about what's unfolded throughout the day there as well as we face this active shooter situation that has, of course, since been stabilized and stopped at this point. We're just waiting for clear information. Aurora spokesman also confirming that, as we've been saying all afternoon, 4 officers were...
The Black McDonald's Operators Association celebrates the DuSable Museum of African American History this Black History Month. The country's oldest Black History Museum is a wealth of innovative exhibits, educational programs, and community activities.
Chicago Auto Show Trivia.
Detailed rundown and explanation as to how this happened today at this particular facility, the Henry Pratt manufacturing facility right around Highland and Prairie in west suburban Aurora. It is a facility that is industrial in its nature, although it's located in a rather residential area surrounded by residences. It is in the business of making typically plumbing fittings and fittings for air supplies and water valves and that sort of thing. It was when the workers who were in there this morning, apparently about people, as we've been saying, who typically work inside that large facility, but it's, as we've heard it described, it sounds more like you have offices, of course, and then you have perhaps some larger, and I'll call them assembly areas or warehouse areas where people would be either working or then taking that finished product and loading it onto vehicles. So the trucks, for instance, that you might see that would be used to take that to customers along the way.
And that gives you an idea, just looking at this live shot right here at the scene, the parking lot, but the building that surrounds it, just the size of the facility alone, clearly making it a challenge for police officers and those first responders. When you have this much area to cover, to see what's going on inside the building, that instantly presents a challenge to those first responders to not only find the active shooter, but then to determine whether or not that person is acting alone or if there are other people in the building as well. And that is why we've seen such a massive police response from not just the Aurora Police Department, but agencies throughout the area who responded there. We saw dozens and dozens of officers dressed in fatigues, dressed in their SWAT outfits coming out of the building. And the Aurora Police Department is going to give us an idea of how many people were involved in this and when exactly this happened and how many different officers had to engage this alleged gunman here that we now believe, according to Chuck Gowdy, is dead inside of this plant.
In addition to police departments involved here, and there are numerous, there are suburban police departments who come in as assists. Some of these police departments have ongoing agreements with others that when something like this happens, people know that they need to respond because they're part of that team that they practiced before in responding to a large incident such as this type. But you have police departments that have come in. State police, of course, have come in. We've seen ambulances from quite some distance that have come in from other fire departments and paramedics in the surrounding area, as some of them, fortunately, not utilized, but many of them showing up there. And I wanted to just make one quick note here, because I know that our Judy Sue and Rob Elgus mentioned this earlier. You see that FedEx truck in the parking lot there. Not sure exactly how that's connected to the business necessarily, but when those first responders, those police officers from Aurora, showed up here at this scene this afternoon, just vaguely knowing what they might be getting into, that there was an active shooter, they had to utilize that truck to some degree to shield themselves from what was going on. That is, an individual, perhaps inside that building, perhaps outside, I'm not sure at that point, but in any case, an individual with a gun who was intent on taking police officers down. 4 of them were injured this afternoon but are in stable condition.
And the FOP putting out, Lodge number 11, putting out a statement too that really speaks to really the intensity of a situation when officers are just arriving. In a statement, they said that every police officer dreads days like this one. Yet these 4 courageous Aurora officers and their colleagues, they did not hesitate to literally put their lives on the line today to stop further bloodshed. Their statement goes on to say these 4 heroes willingly ran into harm's way to protect their fellow citizens and barely nearly paid the ultimate price. We Illinoisans should be humbly grateful for their sacrifice, and we ask that you join us in praying that the injured civilians and police officers make a full and speedy recovery.
Absolutely. Want to note, too, that you just been watching this video that was shot earlier. You may have just noticed a large group of apparently SWAT team members. Again, this is not now, but earlier this afternoon, who were behind those armored vehicles there, more now running in. This is just to get an idea of what they were dealing with there. A large group then ran over to the right-hand side off to the screen. You see the 2 individuals by the cab of that FedEx truck right there taking shield behind it. And now just, again, all of this earlier that you're looking at now. Now you'll see as they pour in through, see the doors there, the 2 doors there, as the heavily armed and protected police team members are entering the building there to see what they were dealing with there and bring this thing to a halt. Chuck, you've been watching this several times, I'm sure, this afternoon.
Alan, it was a textbook entry by the SWAT units, really. They put out what's called a MABUS call. It's a mutual assist call for police from nearby suburbs that they're needed. And these are department personnel specifically assigned for special weapons teams, hostage rescue, negotiators. They train together numerous times a year for events exactly like this. When the call goes out, they show up. And that's exactly what happened today. That FedEx truck may just have been there on a delivery, and they know from their training that when you have a truck that's of that size with a huge engine block, that you use it as cover, because unless he's using a grenade launcher, you're going to get protection from behind that engine block. You're not going to behind a car or crouching down behind a trunk. You really need to be in a place like that. So all of these things, as this played out in real time this afternoon, gave a great view of how the police have had to adapt to the world today, when you really don't know what you're going to face when you go through the door of a factory like this.
Chuck, as you've watched these incidents, though, and you're so familiar with the training, and I'm looking, again, this is the video shot earlier this afternoon, just the sheer number of officers that are involved in these different groups that are cordons, that are some pouring into the building, some heading over to another area of building, it's really quite amazing.
It is, and to some degree, I think in this case, they may have put out a wider call because it was an industrial plant, and they knew the size of it, that multiple entries. They didn't know, of course, at this point, when this tape was shot, they had no idea whether they were looking at 1 gunman or 5 that were in there. But they did know that the person was inside a sprawling facility, and that they would need this kind of manpower just to figure out where the guy was.
How do they gather their intelligence as quickly as possible to know how many people they're dealing with, and for that matter, where they may even be on the property?
Well, they really don't know until they manage to find at least one of the shooters and talk to the people who were in the middle of all of this, talk to the people that we spoke to on the phone, talk to other employees, talk to those who were shot and survived. Did you see more than one person with a gun? How many guns did that person have? I think they were fairly quickly able to narrow down that this was an employee, somebody they recognized with a pistol, and that it wasn't wider than that. Not that that one individual couldn't do a lot of damage in a short period of time, but I think they were able to hone in on him fairly quickly once they got through the door.
And Chuck, it's so often in these situations as well, we actually hear the radio calls, and we are right now getting to the news conference. Let's go ahead and show you the news conference right now. We see the chief walking up, Aurora's police chief, Kristen Zimmern, as well as Governor Pritzker. They are standing by. We're waiting to hear from them. They're going to give us more details. And the gentleman on the right that you see there is Mayor Richard Irvin. At this point, it looks like they're waiting for the news
Perhaps
conference.
for an introduction.
Mayor Richard Irving.
There we go.
Deputy Chief Pete Jackson of the Aurora Police Department. Sheriff Ron Hain from the Kane County Sheriff's Office. Fire Chief Gary Krenitz from the Aurora Fire Department, and a myriad of other people you see wrapped around. I'm going to turn the podium over immediately to Chief Kristen Zeman. She's going to offer a few remarks. So here's Chief Zeman.
Thank you very much. My name is Chief Kristen Zeman. I'm the chief of the Aurora, Illinois Police Department. At approximately 1:24 today, the Aurora Police Department received multiple calls for an active shooter at 641 Archer Avenue, a manufacturing warehouse. At 1:28, officers arrived and were fired upon immediately. 2 of the initial 4 officers entering the building were shot. Additional officers began to arrive and were also fired upon. A total of 5 officers were struck by gunfire. The other officers on the scene located gunshot victims inside the building. At this time, we have confirmed that 5 victims are deceased. The Aurora Fire Department arrived on scene to stage with medics. A regional law enforcement response was coordinated to include Rescue Task Force, and several teams of officers went inside to locate and engage the offender. The building is 29,000 square feet, and when they located the offender, they engaged in gunfire with him, ultimately killing him. The shooter is identified as Gary Martin. He is a 45-year-old man, and we believe he was an employee of the company. At this time, we aren't sure of the motive of this act of violence. We do not have the identities of the deceased, but we would like family members to know that unification for the victims and witnesses that were in the building will be at Aurora University Public Safety Building located at 1408 South Lawn. All 5 police officers were transported to local hospitals, and from there, 2 were airlifted to Chicago area trauma centers. A 6th officer is being treated for a knee injury. I want to take this opportunity to send positive energy to those officers who are being treated and to the officers and medics who showed up from all over the state to render aid. This message is for them. Thank you for your selfless act. Thank you for running towards gunfire and putting your lives in danger to protect those inside the business. My heart goes out to the victims and their families who simply went to work today like any other day. We offer our sincere condolences, and as the facts of this tragedy unfold, we will provide information and attempt to make sense of it. I'd like to introduce now our mayor, Richard C. Irvin, to say a few words.
I don't think I can be clear in stating that today is a sad day in the city of Aurora. For so many years, we have seen similar situations throughout our nation. And the horrible feeling that we get when we see it on the news, to experience it firsthand is even more painful. It's a shame that mass shootings such as this have become commonplace in our country. It's a shame that a cold and heartless offender would be so selfish as to think he has the right to take an innocent life. But we as society cannot allow these horrific acts to become commonplace. We as a society cannot allow the selfless and heartless acts of this terrible tragedy to be relegated to spots on the 10 o'clock news. We must never forget those innocent people who were senselessly gunned down. The mothers and fathers, sons and daughters. We must never forget those police officers that rose to the call of duty and put themselves in harm's way to protect the innocent, who are also mothers and fathers, sons and daughters. Our hearts go out to the victims in this horrific tragedy. Our prayers to their families during what I'm sure will be a long and painful healing process. But we will heal. We will come together as one community and stand by those in pain from today's great loss. We will stand together with those officers shot in the line of duty. We will come together and heal as one Aurora. Let me commend our heroic first responders, the Aurora Police Department, the Aurora Fire Department, our 911 operators, Kane County Sheriff's Office, and all the FBI, and all the responding public safety teams throughout mutual aid, and who have come from near and far to assist today. They all put their lives on the line to secure the health and safety of others. We sincerely thank you. Thank you to every person who was directly involved in this incident. Your patience and professionalism during this entire process was commendable and allowed the responding officers to get the job done. We're here for you all as well. Thank you to the entire Aurora community for helping us to get the word out and provide accurate information throughout the community. Your support was invaluable and will continue to be from this point forward. Thank you to the people from throughout the nation who have offered assistance as well. We need your support and we need your prayers more than ever. On behalf of the entire city of Aurora, remember, we are one community and we will be stronger than ever past this. This time, I will introduce our governor, J.B. Pritzker.
I want to begin by acknowledging the amazing work of the Aurora Police Department and Chief Zeman and all of the men and women who were first responders and every single law enforcement officer involved in securing this scene. You rushed toward danger, and in doing that, you saved countless lives. And you represent the very best of what it means to protect our communities and to serve our communities. You have our deepest gratitude, and all the resources of the state that you need are at your disposal to continue your work into the evening and in the days ahead. I want to say a special thank you to the FBI, the ATF, Illinois State Police for offering backup, for being here to help the city of Aurora and the police department. There is no way to prepare for the pain of losing innocent people in the state that you were elected to lead, the state that you're elected to protect. There is no way to prepare. There are no words for the kind of evil that robs our neighbors of their hopes, their dreams, and their futures. There are no words to express our gratitude to the families of the officers who were injured in the line of duty as they responded within moments to the gravest kind of danger that they can face. Tomorrow, the families of the victims will be less than whole. They join a group that should not exist and yet continues to grow. This morning, I stood with 1,500 community members in Chicago who are fighting the epidemic of gun violence that continues to ravage so many communities. These are everyday citizens who have been called to action by the loss of a loved one, by witness of violence in their communities, or by the desire for change. To the families of the victims here in Aurora, there are no words that I can offer to lessen the pain. But know that our state grieves with you, that MK and I and our family grieves with. May the memory of those that we lost today be a blessing. And more than that, may their memory fuel our work to bring peace to this state that we call home. And may God bless the brave law enforcement officers who continue to run toward danger. Thank you. And let me turn it over to Deputy Chief Rowley, or Officer Rowley.
Thank you, Governor. Okay, so we will return at 9 p.m. this evening. We will have something with much more substance in terms of the progress of our investigation so far. I hope to have enough to give handouts for everyone and answer questions perhaps at that time, but we're not going to take any questions right now, but we will come back at 9 o'clock. Okay, thank you very much.
You've been listening live to the news conference there in Aurora, including the governor, the mayor,